when you're shopping, make sure you are being intentional, because you want to ask yourself questions like, hey, where I'm at right now financially and on the baby steps, can I buy quality things or sacrifice a little bit of the quality to save the money? Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Rachel Cruze Show podcast. I'm so glad that you're here. In this episode, I'm interviewing one of my favorite people in the world, Max Lucado. He has a new book out, which is amazing, and it's all based on the book of Esther. So I cannot wait for you to hear that conversation. But first, let's talk about some of the stores that you might shop at and answer the question, are you getting a good deal? So let's dig right in. So we all know that shopping is fun, especially if you're a spender like me. It feels good, when you buy something, your dopamine goes up, your adrenaline goes up, and it's exciting, and it's fun, you got something new. It's great, it is, it's so great. But we have to be careful with all of that. We never want those emotions to dictate our purchases. And you have to remember, you're spending money when you're doing that stuff, and shopping adds up. So I obviously want you guys to stay in budget. And for some people, in order to stay in budget, they say, okay, well, I need to go to the outlet mall or to the factory versions of some of my favorite brands in order to save money. So what you have to realize is that in some cases, the factory stores, the outlet malls, the quality of the clothes, not as great always, specifically with the materials they use. Sometimes those clothes are a season or two old. That may not matter to you, but they always have a lower price. So I want to break down a couple of these stores. I think it's interesting to kind of compare the regular store versus the factory store. So let's start with J. Crew. So let's look at J. Crew, normal store, and J. Crew factory. And we're going to talk through just some of these common pieces. And my team, we went online and looked at all of the pricing. We looked at all the reviews and kind of came up with this idea, okay, if you compare the pricing and the reviews, which is better? So with J. Crew specifically, we're going to talk about a classic gingham button-up shirt, a striped t-shirt, and a sweater blazer. So first up, a men's gingham button-up shirt. So from J. Crew, it's $64.50. And the reviews were a little mixed. Some people were like, yeah, it's stylish and fits great. Some people said, yeah, the color is inaccurate. It's not what I was thinking, or it shrinks after wash. Now, if you compare the same similar shirt to J. Crew Factory, the factory price is $24.50, and most of the reviews were really great. So in this case, we're going to give the winner to J. Crew Factory. All right, let's look at a boat-necked striped t-shirt. So from J. Crew, this is $49.50. And the stars on jcrew.com were 4.1 out of 5. And a lot of the reviews were things like, oh, this is my perfect shirt. This is exactly what I was looking for. It's an immediate favorite, all that. Now, from J. Crew Factory, it's $39.50. And the reviews were anything from that it's flattering, well-made, a perfect staple piece, all of that. So I'm actually going to give the winner to both, because on the reviews specifically, it was an exact tie. All right, let's look at a women's sweater blazer. So from J. Crew, it was originally $158, but now it's marked down to $126. And a lot of the reviews, again, were great quality, simple, classic, chic, all that. Now, J. Crew Factory, a very similar piece, is $82.50. Really great reviews on this. So again, pricing and reviews, I'm going to give the winner to J. Crew Factory. So if you look at all three pieces at both stores, if you bought just from J. Crew regular store, it would be $240.50. From J. Crew Factory, it would be $146.50. So you get, in this case, very similar looks. Again, the reviews were all great, but you're going to spend $100 less at the factory, and that's a 39% savings. So J. Crew Factory, I think you won on this one. All right, let's look at Bath & Body Works and the Bath & Body Works outlet. So Bath & Body Works is obviously known for their smells, their lotions, their scrubs, their candles, all that stuff. And Bath & Body Works sells all their regular products at their outlet stores on clearance for up to 75% off the regular price. It's crazy. And their outlet products have all of last season's and last year's products. So If you go to the outlet, you need to make sure that the products are still good, because some products, they have ingredients that expire, like lotions that have SPF. And according to their website, they have a shelf life of 2 to 3 years. So before you buy the product at Bath & Body Works outlet, make sure you look at it, you smell it. If it's supposed to be, white flour, and the lotion is not white anymore and it's yellow, you probably don't want to buy it. So make sure that the product is still good. But what's great again is that the outlet is going to have all their scents all year long. So you can buy all your pumpkin spice scents in March, or your Christmas scents in July. It's really a great way to buy gifts too. So if you see the outlet and you want to run in and stock up on some gifts, you're going to save a lot of money that way. But remember, these are great, fun ideas. But when you're shopping, make sure you are being intentional, because you want to ask yourself questions like, hey, where I'm at right now financially and on the baby steps, can I buy quality things all the way around, or do I need more quantity? So I'm going to sacrifice a little bit of the quality to save the money. Again, it's all about where you're at. Neither one is right or wrong. And so for some of you, you may even say, hey, I'm going to skip shopping trips, for the next 2 months so I can save up some money and go and buy a quality product that's going to last me. So again, it's all about what is going on in your life and with your money, because sometimes I think we think, well, I'm going to just save up and have all this money and spend it on one big item, and you may not even need it. And that's the great thing. When you save up and have cash to buy something, after you save it, you may not even want the item. So I think it's really important to ask yourself as well, if I can pay less for something and it's almost basically the same quality, should I just do that and save the money? This whole shopping thing, there's a strategy in play. But you want to be intentional. And part of being intentional is being on a budget. And I always talk about every dollar, but it's one of the most powerful ways for you to get in control of your money, because it's going to show you, hey, here is the amount of money you can spend on this, obviously, specifically clothes. Here's what you have. So then again, some of you guys, depending on where you're at, you can say, hey, I can go to the outlet store and I do want 20 pieces versus 5 pieces at the regular store. So again, there's not a right or wrong here, but understanding and being intentional and staying in budget is what is so, so key. Today, I have a very special guest, one of my favorites, actually. Max Lucado is here. Max, thanks for coming back.
Thank you. Thanks for letting me back. I don't, repeat. I didn't know if you'd want me back.
It's a gamble. It was a gamble. It was a flip of the coin. I was like, I guess so. And we were laughing just before, because last time he was here, I was very pregnant with my third, Charles, and your kid's book, Your Special, is like one of my all-time favorite. I talk about it a lot because it makes me cry like every time we read it. I love it so much. And when he was here last time, I was like, I want you to sign this for the baby, but we didn't tell anyone the name, but I told Max the name. That was Charles. So Max Lucado, Winston Cruz, and Rachel Cruz knew the name of our child until birth. So
I was in the inner circle.
You were I think you even emailed my dad, and you were like, I know the name.
I know something you don't know.
That's right. I know the name of your grandson because I signed his book. Oh, well, thanks again for coming back. But you're here because you have a new book. You were made for this moment. And this released when? How long ago?
It's out this week.
Oh, it's
brand
this week?
new.
Oh, it is brand new. Oh, I thought it was okay. I thought it was a few weeks ago.
just coming out.
Okay, yeah. Which you've sold.
Hot off the press.
Hot off the press. And your specific writing, I love so much. I told him as well, we're going through one of his books on Romans in our small group at church. But the way you present ideas and the way you present ultimately the gospel is just, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. But this book specifically, you walk through the book of Esther was a theme through the book. So for people out there that are not familiar with that story, can you give kind of a high level Cliff Notes version of Esther?
Yes. It's a great book. And I do think I'm hoping to kind of blow the dust off of it because it is easily buried in the Old Testament. It's a small book, comparatively speaking. And Esther doesn't quite get the stage time that Moses and Abraham and others do, but she should. So it's a 9-chapter book. It takes place in 5th century BC Persia. We don't have anything in the world today comparable to ancient Persia. It was the Roman Empire of its day. It was twice the size geographically of the United States. consisted of half the people on the planet in terms of population. It was immense.
Wow.
Okay, so that's the context. 4 main characters in the story. It's just the greatest story. It's got these lively, colorful characters. But here's the rundown. Okay, King Xerxes was 32 years old, rich beyond imagination. A womanizer, ultimate misogynist, more of a drinker than a thinker. He was just a bum in terms of, running. He had a harem. He had hundreds of women at his disposal. His right-hand man was named Haman, which I always chuckle because it sounds like hangman, because he was a killer. He was a murderer. He had blood on his hands, and he had a hatred for the Jewish people. So Jewish people were in Persia. They were dispersed all over the world. We're 3 generations now removed from the dispersion of the Jewish people. So it's been 3 generations since they knew Jerusalem. There's no temple. There's no Torah that they're exposed to. And so one of those Jews is named Mordecai. Well, somehow he's worked his way up into the inner circle of the king's court. And he has this niece by the name of Hadassah or Esther. And so those are the main characters, okay? So Xerxes, he's the ultimate misogynist. He wants Vashti to dance in front of his bibulous male buddies. They're all drunk. It's just terrible.
Yeah.
And she refuses. Good for you, Vashti. She gets the boot, so he needs a new queen. So he does the equivalent of a Star Search contest. And guess who wins? But Esther. And guess who no one knows is Jewish? Esther. Mordecai's Jewish. She's Jewish, but nobody knows it. So that's part of the story, is that they concealed their Jewish identity. They kind of compromised rather than stand out. Well, what caused them to stand out is this anti-Semitic, Jew-hating Haman demands that everybody bow before him. Mordecai refuses to do so because he's Jewish and he knows, even though Haman doesn't know he knows that Haman hates Jews. He refuses to bow, and that triggers everything, sets it in motion. And I'm going to pause and let you ask a question because I'll take up all of our time.
No, I love it. Because there's so many plot twists. There's so many things that go on.
Best. It's so unexpected.
So for you, though, in this, you chose this story for a reason,
Exactly.
and to bring a level of inspiration for us
This day
today
and
in
age.
2021.
Yeah.
So what are you seeing? What's the correlation? What are things that we can take from that and just say we can really apply?
Yeah,
apply to our
I
lives?
was working. I'm still a pastor of a church in San Antonio, and I was preparing a sermon series, and I actually was going to do a series on stewardship, which is important for every human being, every church. But the pandemic hit, the racial divide hit, the world just seemed in chaos. So it seemed like that we needed to study as a church. Is there a story in the Bible about global calamity? Well, of course, there are a bunch. But we had never studied the story of Esther. And that's such a classic story because if you're a Jew in Persia in 5th century BC, and you've got this despot for a king, you've got this thug as his right-hand man, and you're Jewish, and you're just a tiny remnant of people. You're not even important to the Persians. You don't matter to them. You're going to feel tiny and small.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people today, Rachel, feel tiny and small. They're weary, they're wounded, and they're worn out by everything that the world has gone through. I know that there's people who are political, who are arguing and fighting, but the vast majority of people are just saying, I'm just tired.
Yes.
Just tired.
Yes.
Somebody help me. I'm trying to raise my kids in the midst of this. I'm trying to stay healthy in the midst of this. I don't want to fight with anybody. I just want to, lead a God-fearing good life.
Right.
That's what the story of Esther's about, how God guides his people through a difficult time. And of course, the great trivia question of the story of Esther is It's the one of two books in the Bible where God's name is not mentioned.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, I thought it was just one book, and it was Esther. What's the second?
Song of Solomon is in there. Song
learn
of
something
Solomon.
every
And to
day.
be honest,
I would have failed trivia. I always knew it was Esther.
I would have failed it too until about 18 months ago. I always thought it was just one book, and then I got corrected.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm a pastor. I'm supposed to know those things.
No. So I was actually, right before you came, I was doing another interview with Christine Kane, and we were talking about drifting and how our world, like what you just said, it's so volatile, whether it's spiritual or political or health or financial. It just feels like everything is just
so many trigger points.
It's just so wild. It really is. And so the anchor point, though, right, of our spiritual walk, of how key that is. So for people that don't necessarily have a faith walk or a spiritual life, but those that say that they do, they still could feel far, or like he's not listening, right?
Yeah.
Or that level of almost feeling in isolation.
Absolutely.
I'm sure Esther felt that in Elements, or if there's parts of that story that has that. So what encouragement do you see from that book and of what we can have today in a spiritual walk with God?
You ask great questions. You found your niche.
No, I don't know. No. I have a lot in my head. I'm like, okay, I only have a short amount of time with
We only have 4 hours.
Yeah, that's right. That would be great.
Okay, so Mordecai refuses to bow down before Haman. That forces his hand, and now everybody knows he's Jewish. And everybody knows the Jews are about to be destroyed. So Mordecai responds by entering into a time of repentance. He puts on sackcloth and ashes. He walks up and down the streets. He's crying out. He's screaming. He's beating his chest. And here's the guy who's related to the queen. And so she gets word of what he's doing, an example of how cloistered the life is that she's living. Apparently, she doesn't even know there's been a Holocaust declared because he has to tell her what's going on. She says to him, get your act together. We got a good thing going here. Don't blow it. And he sends a message to her, said, don't you know we're about to all be killed? And apparently she didn't know. And that's when he gives that famous statement, you're here for this, who knows, but that God has placed you here for such a moment as this.
Yeah.
And that's why we entitled the book, You Were Made for This Moment. And she responds, I'm almost hesitant to get to what she did in case I don't want to tell everybody what happens next. I want them to read it.
That's good.
But she responds with tremendous courage.
Yes.
And she really moves from a somewhat passive spouse or queen to really rising to be the moral leader of the Jewish people. And she saves her people through her courage and through her savvy. Not just through her courage, but through her savvy.
Yes.
She has the courage to appear uninvited to the king. And when the king says, what do you want? She plans 2 banquets because she knows the quickest way to a man's heart's through his stomach.
Lots of food.
And she invites Haman to the banquet. And oh my goodness, the turnarounds that happen. It's just wonderful. The end result is the Jews obviously survive. And not only did they survive, Queen is recognized by the king, and Mordecai is elevated to the very position that Haman had. And to this day, the Jewish people celebrate what Esther did every year in the Feast of Purim, in which they reenact this moment. And I think it's a 9-chapter drama because it truly is a drama. It reads like a screenplay. And if you don't know what's happening, it'll keep you on the edge of your seat.
So good. Well, I love the words that you used in that earlier, though, of being passive and having to take action. And I think a lot of people in their lives, it almost feels easier to be passive, right? Whether it's with your marriage or your parenting or your money or anything. Sometimes you feel so exhausted that it's like, I just want to sit back.
And that was an option for her.
Let life happen, yes.
She could have stayed cloistered, protected.
Yes.
And never, been pampered for the rest of her life.
Yes. So for, because you've been a pastor for how long?
Since 79.
Okay.
That's a long time. Since before Noah.
So, but in all of your experience, because I know you've experienced all different kinds of people, all different stories, all different backgrounds, everything. What encouragement do you have for people that feel like life is hitting them, right? And to be passive feels easier right now. Yeah. What encouragement do you have of people having the courage, like Esther, of this level of action, this level of intentionality, this level of kind of stepping up into their life what that looks like for them in the end result versus being passive and letting things just happen to them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think what Mordecai said to Esther is what God says to all of us. Who knows but that you have been placed here for a moment such as this? In other words, God himself orchestrates, Rachel, the generation into which we're born, the nation into which we're born, and the situation into which we're born. It's not accidental. And the fact that you're here right now in this era with this responsibility, born into the circumstances into which you're born, that's all part of God's plan. It's all part of God's plan. And so that's reassuring, but it also can be challenging. It's reassuring because it means, okay, God's in control. But it's challenging because it means, okay, God's got a job for me. You know?
Yes, yes.
It's my assignment to raise these kids. Or it's my assignment to live in this neighborhood. Or it's my assignment to face this era, this challenge, this racism, this sexism, whatever it is that the world is facing right now.
Yep.
It's my assignment to try to do my best to respond in a courageous way.
Yes.
It's very tempting to withdraw and to hide out. I get that. I get that. I mean, my office in the church is a very safe place. I don't want those troublemakers walking in my door. But, you know, that's just not our assignment.
Yes.
I think Esther reminds us that God is going ahead of us, and he's doing things behind the scenes that we cannot see, and he'll never give us a challenge we cannot meet.
I love that. And there's a level of even, you know, you just saying that, a level of rest that you can kind of be in. I went to this retreat thing a few weekends ago, but part of their walking through the weekends were these different, what they called realities. I won't get into them all, but the first one is that God has called you to be part of his bigger story. And then the second is that you have a specific role to play. And if you don't play that, no one else will.
Yeah.
And it's this idea and the wording of that or the beauty of that, which again, such a time as this. And in this moment, I'm like, there is a rest that we can have.
It really is.
That there is that purpose and there is something there. And like you said, it's the God of the universe, right? Did it. He designed it.
Yeah.
From the moment that he knit you in your mother's womb to now and where you're at. And there's a level of comfort there. And again, even if you're not someone of faith, I'm like, to know that there is something bigger going on in people's story, in their stories. And I think it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And you wove it so well together, obviously with the story of Esther and this book. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Max, again, for stopping
Thank you.
by. It's so wonderful. Again, you were made for this moment, you guys.
Do you have any other secrets you want to tell me? You know, like your son's name or anything?
Oh, I know, I should. And then you can email the family and be like, I know something all of you don't know.
I love your family. Let me just say that.
Well, thank you.
You know, your dad's my hero, and we're old friends, both in terms of age. But I love you guys. Thank you so much.
We appreciate you so much and all that you do and the fact you stopped by. The old Rachel Cruz show. I really do. I really appreciate it. So you guys, you can pick up the book anywhere books are sold. And where can everyone find you?
MaxLucado.com. Yeah, MaxLucado.com.
Perfect.
That's right,
Well, thanks again.
Or you can go to the parole officer and ask him.
We're in the, either one, people, either one. Thanks again. I appreciate it. Today, I have one of you on to talk through a question. So today, I have Audrey here with me, calling all the way from Oregon. So Audrey, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so first tell me, where are you in the process of your money journey and the baby steps?
So my husband and I signed up for Ramsey Plus about 3 months ago. So we're on baby step 2. But we went over a little bit, so we have to go back to baby step 1 and then go back to 2 again.
Yes. That always happens, doesn't it? You get that baby step 1, that emergency funds, and then something happens. You got to go take some money out. I know. It's a little defeating, but then it kind of feels good that you actually had money there, right? So
yeah.
That's the positive. Awesome. Okay, so what's your question for today?
Yeah, so when using the Every Dollar app, my husband gets paid every week. Every Friday. And I'm just having a hard time with the budgeting. I know what's supposed to be there and what's going to be there, but it's not in there yet, and knowing what to pay when with that weekly paycheck.
Yes, this is a great question, and one that a lot of people have who especially are just starting out budgeting. So there's 2 ways you can kind of do this if you want. One way is a little bit more detailed. than the other way. But I would say the detailed way is to have kind of another list to say, okay, here are the things that we're absolutely going to have to buy. So, this week I know I'll buy probably X amount of groceries, which will be probably a fourth of your entire monthly budget, right? Maybe you have bills due on the 7th or something, and okay, that paycheck, we need the money for those bills. And then week 2, here's probably what we are. And you kind of break it out in a different list. So as the money comes in, you know exactly where those are going and what bills to pay. Now, again, that's very detailed. But in another perfect world, which it may take you another month or 2 to get here, is that you actually use the money from last month. So you're using the numbers for what's about to come in, but the money sitting physically in your checking account is from your other paychecks. And so you're able to go and use basically a month there. So you kind of are a month ahead financially that's in your account, if that makes sense. So you still have a plan and you still know it's going, but the actual tangible money that's going out to pay bills are actual dollars from the paychecks from the month before. But again, you're still planning that same month, but the dollars are being used from last month's paycheck. So that may take you a little while to kind of save up and get ahead, especially, if you are living paycheck to paycheck. So you really do, your paycheck hits and that's the actual cash you're using to pay the bills. So you may have to do that rhythm for another month or 2 or even 3 months. But hopefully you get to a point where you have a little bit more buffer in your checking account to go ahead and use that cash for the month. And then as the other paychecks hit, you'll use that money for the next month. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's good.
Yes, it's a little confusing, I know, because we always talk about planning ahead. And as your paychecks come in, you know exactly where every dollar's going. But when you get into the tactical side of it, it can be a little confusing. So again, for probably the first, maybe next month or 2, do that week list to say, okay, here's exactly what we're going to spend per week. So when the paycheck hits, but then maybe, as you get momentum and you guys start cutting expenses, you kind of start going to that debt snowball that you can leave a little extra cash as that buffer in your checking account.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yes. So how's it been so far? You guys are about 3 months in and you're now kind of starting to see and feel the tactical side of it. How has it felt so far?
Yeah, well, the biggest thing so far is that I got excited and paid off a bill and then was like, we don't have that money till next week. So then I had to bring it out of the savings account and so
absolutely.
I got a little too excited.
I know. I love the enthusiasm though. You're like, look, we're out of debt. Like, that debt is paid. Oh, yeah. I know. And that's what it can get so, so specific and so detailed, especially at the beginning as you're starting this process. But again, you guys are right at that hump, if you will, of the 90 days, because we talk about after 90 days, this stuff really does start to be more fluid. And so those little mistakes, that you've made at the beginning, which obviously are great mistakes because you want to pay off the debt and it's great. But you kind of start to get more in that rhythm of knowing, okay, the pay cycle and knowing the budget even more, and it actually kind of starting to be more predictable.
Yeah. It's definitely getting better where I'm seeing, that needs tweaked in the budget and that kind of the humps there.
Yes, for sure. So awesome. Well, Audrey, thank you so much for your question and coming on and sharing your story, because it helps so many people, because a lot of people have your exact question.
Well, thank you very much.
Absolutely. And you guys, if you have a question and maybe you can come on the show, just ask your question on any of my social media channels from Facebook and YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. We'll be looking at those and hopefully you can come on and we can talk through your money situation. And again, like I said to Audrey, it's true. So many of you, this is the boat that you're in. You're figuring out this budgeting stuff and it's getting down to the wire of the tactical side of it. But man, once you hone it in and it really becomes more normal, it gets easier and easier. And I want to thank Max Lucado for being on today's episode. He's absolutely amazing. And for you guys out there, thank you for listening. If you have not hit that subscribe button, make sure to do that. And as always, make sure to take control of your money and create a life you love.